Hi Dharma friends. Today I want to talk to you for a little bit about a subject that came up when I met one of the members of our Sangha at LaGuardia Airport. We had a lovely time for about 2.5 hours before he had to catch his flight back to Toronto. And he's a new member of our Sangha, and he's still exploring true Shin Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu, the teachings of Master Shinjin. And he had some questions for me, and he wrote them all down. And one of them in particular struck me as so important that I wanted to share it with everybody as one of the videos that I'm making, especially for new folks, for people who are new to true Shin Buddhism or new to our online Sangha. And by the way, if you want to visit our Sangha, you certainly don't have to join. You can certainly look at what we say and what we write without being a member. But just go to Google or whatever search engine you use and type in True Shin Buddhism Yahoo group. And that'll bring it up right away, and then you can go right there very easily by just clicking the link, and you can find everything that we've been writing ever since 2006 actually. And now we have close to 200 members from all around the world who come to this unique Buddha Sangha, this unique community. It's really, as far as I know, the only online Sangha like it in the entire world at this point. Maybe there's another, I just don't know about it. Anyway, back to my friend David and his question. He was confused about Shinjin. Now, if you've listened to my video on Shinjin already, you know that Shinjin is actually the cornerstone of the Dharma of true Shin Buddhism. And in fact, Master Renyo, the second great teacher of true Shin Buddhism, said, in our school, in other words, in the school of Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu, Shinjin is everything. The whole point of our school of Buddhism is to help people come to this state of mind which we call Shinjin, which is the faith, mind, consciousness given to us by Amida Buddha himself. When people come to Shinjin in this lifetime, what that means is that when this lifetime is over and they're letting go of this body and moving on to whatever comes next, people of Shinjin will awaken in Amida's Pure Land immediately, and then once they awaken there, they will immediately experience the final transformation, the transformation to Buddhahood. And I need to say at the same time that the whole point and purpose of Buddhism generally is to become a Buddha. It's not to become incrementally happier or incrementally wiser or incrementally more compassionate, even though those are good and noble goals in themselves. It is actually to fulfill the destiny that you and I have to one day become true Buddhas, just like Shakyamuni was a true Buddha. Okay, so what was David's question? David's question was about what is involved in coming to Shinjin. In other words, what is our part as students or disciples of Shakyamuni who are on this particular path put out by Master Shinjin, and what is the part of Amida Buddha? And I just thought this was a great question, and so that's why I want to answer it here and now today. Very simply, there's really only one thing that we do as a practice in the Dharma school of true Shin Buddhism. And what we do is called listening deeply to the Dharma. We listen deeply. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that as we're exploring this Dharma school, we are willing to temporarily set aside all of our pre-existing ideas and thoughts, all of our pre-existing understandings, and just put them on the shelf for a little bit so we can come with an open mind and an open heart to evaluate the teachings properly. And this is not just true for Shin Buddhism. This is something Shakyamuni Buddha taught himself in the very famous Kalama Sutra. And the Kalama Sutra is a sutra written about some people from the Kalama community who came to talk to the Buddha and who expressed their frustrations. And their frustrations were about the fact that there were countless teachers and they didn't know who to believe and how to figure out who had the right stuff when it came to spiritual teaching. And the Buddha's answer was simply brilliant here. What he said to them is, don't believe anything that anybody says, not even me. Instead, listen to the teacher very carefully, make sure you understand what he is teaching, and then after you have properly understood it, then you need to evaluate it in your own heart. So first, in Shin Buddhism, we listen with the head, we listen with the intellect to understand the intellectual Dharma content of the teaching. And then, once we've understood it properly, we've asked all the clarifying questions that we need to ask from whoever is functioning as the teacher, then we listen with the heart. We listen inside to hear the voice of the Buddha within. Now that might not be an audible voice, but it will be a sense within that comes from a place beyond our rational intellect, that actually comes from the Buddha life that lives inside us, the Buddha within. And if the Buddha bears witness and says that this teaching is true, and true for us, and vital for us, then, and only then, in the path of true Shin Buddhism, we entrust ourselves and our karmic destiny entirely to Amida Buddha and his primal vow. And so that's our part. Our part is to listen deeply. Now, what does listening deeply include or entail? Well, first of all, if you find a true teacher, an honest teacher, a good teacher of Master Shinrin's teachings, you'll want to listen to the teacher so you understand what he's teaching. And then you also want to read, if you're able to read, and many people in Master Shinrin's day were not able to read, but you want to read from our core texts, the writings of Master Shinrin and Master Renyo, which really define, the Dharma of true Shin Buddhism and lay it out in great detail. And you can read other books or articles or blogs that have been written by other people who are also teaching the same teaching, the true teaching of the Pure Land Way that Master Shinrin and Master Renyo taught. So these are all essential parts of listening deeply. Another part of listening deeply comes when you actually begin to ask the teacher that you're working with real and honest questions. The fact of the matter is that it is very difficult for most people to come to Shinjin because they have obstacles in their minds. They have intellectual obstacles, misunderstandings about the Dharma, misunderstandings about Buddhism generally, and misunderstandings about the true teaching of the Pure Land Way. And if those intellectual obstacles are not deconstructed and replaced with Dharma truth, then the person will never receive Amida's gift of Shinjin and will continue to transmigrate in the samsaric realms. And the second kind of obstacle people have to deal with are not intellectual obstacles, but rather emotional obstacles. Many people who come to our Sangha, and many people who came to Master Shinrin and Master Renyo, had all sorts of emotional and psychic baggage that really acted as a block, keeping them from listening deeply and entrusting themselves and their karmic destiny entirely to Amida Buddha. So what our Dharma masters tell us, very directly and very distinctly, is to really reach out and bring your questions, bring your doubts, bring your confusion, and talk it all over with somebody who can serve as a good teacher for you. Don't hold back because you're afraid of saying something stupid. Don't hold back because you're ashamed of your thoughts and your ideas. Don't hold back because you don't want someone to judge you. In the Sangha of True Shin Buddhism, we're all in the same boat. We're all really spiritual idiots who finally figured out that we can't save ourselves. And so all of us, every one of us, we entrust Amida Buddha to do what we could never do for ourselves. That's why we are on the path of other power Buddhism and not self-power Buddhism anymore. So these are your essential tasks when it comes to listening deeply to the Dharma. Okay? And what I really want to stress, having had a lot of experience with a lot of people for the past 11 years as I've been functioning as a teacher of True Shin Buddhism, is that many people are very reticent about coming forward and actually sharing their questions and their doubts and their inability to somehow crack the code, so to speak, and receive Amida's gift of Shinjin. And what I say to such people over and over again, and I'm not nagging, I'm simply inviting such people to find yourself a good teacher. I'm willing to talk to anybody. My friend Josho Adrian Sirlia, who is a Shin Buddhist priest in Romania who speaks perfect English, he's willing to talk to anybody. And there are other people as well who are really true teachers and who are really willing to talk to anybody to help them resolve their questions and their doubts so that they can receive Amida's gift of Shinjin in this life and become Buddhas in the life to come. And so that brings me to Amida's part in this whole discussion. Our part is listen deeply. Do everything we can to make listening deeply a priority of your life. If you truly yearn for Buddhahood, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you don't want to keep going through endless cycles of birth and death, if you're tired of suffering and you want to come to the end of suffering, you really should put everything that you can into this practice, this singular practice of listening deeply. I like to play poker as a hobby, and so sometimes I use the metaphor, what you really want to do here is go all in. Don't keep some of your chips back, and save them for a rainy day. Go all in. Jump into the deep end of the pool with this thing and really make this Buddhahood or bust. I've said this to people very directly and personally many, many times. Make it your priority in life to become a person of Shinjin in this life so that you can become a true Buddha the minute that this life is over. And so when we do that and we go all in, then Amida Buddha's part is to give us this gift of Shinjin, this gift of faith, mind, consciousness. It is truly an inconceivable gift. And Master Shinjin uses that word inconceivable. It's one of his favorite words that he uses when he tries to describe what Shinjin has meant in his life. And I would say the same for my life. And I have many Dharma friends, and we have many members of our Sangha who would say the exact same thing, that this gift of Shinjin was the game changer for them. Many of the people in our Sangha have been lifelong seekers, myself included, since I'm about 20 years old, and right now I'm 63, and seeking whatever it is that the pot of gold is at the end of the rainbow, whatever that means, has really been the driver for my life. And it's been so for many, many people. And all of us who've come to the place where we have been given the gift of Amida Shinjin, each and every one of us says, this is what I was looking for my whole life, even when I didn't have the words to describe what it was I was looking for. When I first started reading about Buddhism, I was about 20. I was reading something from the Zen teacher D.T. Suzuki, who later on in his life really embraced the Shin Buddhism of his mother at the very back end of his own life. And I was reading this stuff, and I knew there was something there, and I was reading some other spiritual teachers and I knew there was something there, and I plunged into a number of different spiritual directions, and I knew there was something there, but none of these things I tried, and none of these things I read about was really what I needed and wanted. And so I remained ever unsatisfied, ever a seeker, and never a finder. Well, now, because of this Dharma, which I began to hear really back in 2002, and I started looking at it when I went through some very, very difficult personal tragedy in my own immediate family. And all of a sudden, even though I was already a Buddhist, self-power, Buddhism, meditation, all the things that I had learned and which I had become reasonably adept at, none of it was any good for me anymore. My mind was so torn up, so broken from these tragic experiences that I couldn't meditate. I couldn't really think 2 or 3 thoughts in a row. I was that upset with life itself and what had happened in my immediate family. And that's when I first looked at Shin Buddhism. And from the moment I started reading Master Shinrin's stuff, his writings, I recognized that this was somehow the right thing for me. And I finally received Amida's gift 2 years later, after meeting somebody who was a truly good teacher and able to answer my personal questions and overcome my personal doubts. And his name is Aiken Kobai Sensei, and we have his books in our libraries, our online libraries, and we'll be happy to point you in that direction if you'd like to read his books as well. He's a 16th generation Shin Buddhist priest, a retired professor of Shin Buddhist studies in Japan, and he is really my Dharma mentor and the reason that I was able to finally make sense of the Dharma. And the truth is, and I'll say this as well, is that if you're interested in Shin Buddhism, you almost certainly will not get it right, and you will not understand it properly without finding someone who is a true teacher, a good teacher, a person of the same Shinjin as Master Shinrin, who can serve as your Dharma teacher. You need that kind of relationship in your life because almost nobody gets Shin Buddhism when they're just doing it on their own. And frankly, there are so many false teachers in the Shin Buddhist Sangha today that it's very easy to get confused and led astray and led away from the true teaching rather than having the true teaching adequately explained. So I hope that clears up for anybody who has a question the issue of who has what to do when it comes to receiving the gift of true Shin Buddhism. Our part, simply to go all in and listen deeply. Put your own previous ideas on the shelf temporarily. You can always take them back and listen as best as you can with your head to a true teacher as he explains the true teaching of true Shin Buddhism. And then once you've understood the Dharma propositions of true Shin Buddhism, then you need to listen with your heart. This is not a rational and logical kind of process. This is a heart process. This is a spiritual process. You go inside and you wait to see if you're going to get an inner witness that yes, this teaching is the right stuff. This teaching is the Dharma for you. And if you get that inner witness, having heard the teaching properly, then and only then will you be able to entrust yourself and your karmic destiny entirely to Amida Buddha. At that point, you've done everything you can do. And now Amida Buddha will give you his gift of Shinjin, or if there are other things in your consciousness that are questions and doubts that you haven't yet unearthed and resolved, Amida will shine his light and show you those questions and doubts, again, as you work with a good teacher. And as you work with a good teacher, exposing and then resolving those hidden questions and hidden doubts, finally you get to the point, sooner or later. And for some people it's sooner, and for some it's later. But finally you get to the point where you have no obstacles, no more doubts, no more questions, and you're just ready to let Amida embrace you, take you in his arms, and lead you to the Pure Land, giving you the gift of Shinjin in this life. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'll put my email address at the bottom so you can get in touch with me directly, or I'll also give the URL for our Sangha at the bottom, and also a URL for our Shin Buddhist Library, so you can read more there as well. I wish you all the best on your spiritual journey, and I tell you truly, whether you believe it or not, that your destiny, your ultimate karmic destiny, sooner or later, in this life or in some other life to come, is to complete your spiritual journey and become a Buddha at long last. Thanks for listening.